First of all, thank you so much for agreeing to share your stories and for allowing us all to come together and to learn and to grow and to unite. Do you mind sharing a story about when you felt discriminated or unequal because of your race?
So there's discrimination on one hand, but then there's racial abuse on the other. And yeah, those are things I definitely experienced. It was a completely random situation. He just put his arm around my shoulder and said, I kid you not, he said, I am your slave master. At first, I was just stunned. I just thought, how could you even think to say that?
It sounds very exaggerated, but I think really if you were to like ask a few Black people when is a time when they felt discriminated against or segregated or prejudiced, they would probably ask you more, when did they not feel discriminated or prejudiced? Because you could think about when you go to the store and you're being followed aisle to aisle, when you're on the tube and then people are not sitting next to you and you're like, but why?
I was actually thinking about this, and I feel like I've been fortunate enough that I don't believe I've ever felt that too many times in my life. But even when I moved to Switzerland and then the UK, I still felt like, I was just a person. I wasn't necessarily a Black person until I came to the US. And that's when you really feel that, okay, there is a difference here between being a Black person and a white person.
When I was in Tunisia and I used to live there, and they used to walk down the streets and literally call Black people monkeys.
And I was coming back to my apartment, and the concierge was, after the front door, and I used the key to get in. I walked past to the elevator to my apartment, and the concierge said, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "I live here. I just used the key to get in." And she said, "Really? You live here?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I walked past, and I was just thinking, wait, she really just questioned the fact that I live here because of who I am.
Even in my apartment complex, the lady was like, "Do you even live here?" I've been living here 2 years, but because it's a nicer area, it's not expected for, Black people or minorities to live here because they just assume you don't have the money or something. So
some guy, he puts a rope around my wrist and then he starts pulling it along. And then I realized he was basically trying to depict that I was a slave and he was dragging me in chains. It was my first real encounter with racism. And it's one thing to see stuff like that on TV and think, wow, it must be really horrible for these people. But then to go live it and experience it yourself, those incidents kind of scar you a bit and they make you a bit wary of people because you never really know what someone's thinking when they're looking at you.
We are humans, right? Definitely to have some element of pain that you feel rejected.
For people saying Black girls are sassy. Sassy is synonymous with aggressive. Aggressive is something that's always associated with Black people. It's like, oh, you're aggressive, you look aggressive, and this and that. So it's literally, there have been so many instances.
And I can only imagine what it's like for some people who've gone through much worse and how traumatizing that can be.
But why do you think that it's so different between Europe and the States?
I think part of it has to do with the history over here, and that people are still feeling the effects and living with it to this very day. And you have things like redlining that happen over here. And there are just millions of people who've gone through that entire process of legal discrimination. And so it's very much real in the minds of most people.
I really love how you touched on the difference between discrimination and racial abuse. I never really considered that there were two different things or that there was anything else other than discrimination.
You can racially abuse someone all day long, but as long as you don't deny them equal access to opportunities that you would allow your white peers, then it's basically like there's no discrimination in the workplace, no discrimination at home or wherever. They have the same opportunities and access to opportunities to other people, but you're just racist anyway. But then on the flip side, you can be someone who doesn't racially abuse people, but you discriminate against someone because of the color of their skin. So like you look at someone and you say, we're going to deprive them of certain things. And like for something like college admissions, you can have a favoritism towards white students, but you would never say anything racist yourself, but you are discriminating against non-white students because of the color of their race, color of their skin.
What do you think that we can do to learn and grow and inspire one another, whether it's us as everyday people or governments or organizations or regulations that need to be put into place?
I think it really starts off with, opening the dialogue to talk about all these things. And this is why, in a sense, everything that is happening now, it's very unfortunate, but the blessing in disguise is that finally, we're opening that dialogue that so many people have tried for years to open, but it was kind of we make a step, but then we make 5 steps back, and then a few years go by, whereas now it's we're actually openly talking about it, and people are willing to educate themselves.
You should, as much as possible, try and act within your immediate sphere of influence. So act locally as much as you can. For me, myself, I just say, speak to your family members, to your friends, try and educate them, because education is so, so important. It's important we have to continue educating our kids, the future, because that's ultimately what's going to take care of this ignorance that we have in our society. Donate to projects that you feel represent you and are for the betterment of human society as a whole. And I think we could go a long way.
What's happening with in the US right now? A lot of people are going about saying, dismantle the police, defund the police, and I understand the reasoning behind that. But the truth is, those things cannot happen until the people who have the power to make that change look within themselves, challenge their own biases, and understand that they need to change first and foremost. These are the biases I have. I have to unlearn them. I have to start looking past the color of people's skin. That's why they say, be the change you want to see in the world. It all starts with the individual.
A lot of nations across the globe are literally protesting, because it's going to get to the point where the governments will have no other choices but to address it,
There is something that a lot of people have said, a lot of white people have said, and I know they mean well by it, but it's actually very dangerous. They say, I don't see color. And when people say that, they're trying to say, I don't take your skin color into account. You're just a human to me. But it's dangerous, because what that actually does is, by overlooking the color of someone's skin, you are also overlooking what it means to be a person of a black person. What you actually need to do is, I see that you're a black person and I know what it means to be black in our society. And so I'm going to challenge myself and challenge those around me to reevaluate how we see and treat black people.
It's basically as if you've been stuck somewhere and you were muted for years. There was a fabric over your mouth. And for years, you try to scream. Sometimes your voice is muffled, but there's a bit of sound that comes out. And finally, the fabric is removed after all these years. Would you stay quiet and never speak again? Or would you finally scream and talk? And I was like, this to some extent is the situation. For years, people have lost their lives. People have been muted. People, don't talk and address things. I'm grateful to have non-black friends who have been very vocal this week, who have been speaking up, because I've been seeing a lot of posts about, silence being betrayal.
And going back to what you said, that silence is violence. I think a lot of white people especially feel that it's not their place. They can never fully understand. And so I think they just hide behind the screen and feel like they can't come out. So in terms of that, do you encourage them to at least do come out, learn and support us and unite? Or do you think that, okay, no, this is a black movement and we should have a say first, our voices should be heard first?
I like the fact that you say support us. Yes, because it's not a black versus whites issue. It's the racist and the broken system versus everyone else, really, ultimately, and black people. The truth of the matter is that there's privilege in the world. Color, there's privilege of class, there's privilege of gender. If you have that privilege, what are you doing with it? Because if you're just using that privilege to just get by in life, something is uncomfortable for you, but it doesn't concern you and you're not doing anything, then I think that's wrong. Whereas if you're then using your privilege to, make a change, then that's great. I don't think it's just a black movement.
It's encouraging for me to see that there are a lot of white people who are happy to or rather are willing to admit their privilege to themselves, first and foremost, and then to use their privilege as a platform and say, okay, what can I do as a white person to help make society a more just place for Black people? And I think it's a very important first step, because it's very easy to tweet or retweet things or post a Black square on Instagram or post a hashtag. It's doing the bare minimum. It's essentially virtue signaling. What can you actually do actively to help make society a more just place for the oppressed and the downtrodden?
No one is saying that all lives do not matter. It's just that at the minute, like, Black lives are not mattering. Like, they're not being taken into consideration. We all need to come together and be united.
We look at pictures and videos of the protests that happened in 1960. How does it make you feel that it's 2020 and we're still fighting for this? We still need to protest about this. We still need to march about this. Do you think that we should have progressed a little bit more?
You know, you look at it back then, and much needed change did come out of that. We had the Civil Rights Act of the 1960s. And I look at it now and I say, this is almost bigger than the US now. It's almost on a global scale. You see people protesting all over the world. And one part of me says, okay, we have come some way since 1960s. The fact that we still have to do it in 2020 shows that there's still a long way to go. Change needs to happen, right? This protest is only ever going to be successful if the people on top effectuate meaningful change. But it does make me happy that we are getting the issues out there. People are hearing our voices, and it's not just Black people protesting now. That's the thing. Everyone is. Everyone sees how much of an injustice this is. So
there was something that Will Smith said, which has made the rounds on social media. He said, racism isn't getting worse, it's just getting filmed. And it's a very striking statement, because it actually is very upsetting that in 2020, we haven't had as much progress in the past 60 years as we should have. Because I was thinking about this earlier, and I thought to myself, in the year 1960, my mother had just learned to speak. My dad was in primary school, and we're still talking about the same thing now when they're on the verge of being grandparents. It's defeating. I think that's the best word for it. It's easy to just think, you know what, nothing's ever going to change. There's nothing we haven't done or said. We've signed all types of petitions. We've lobbied governments. We've rioted. People have had peaceful protests, looting, whatever. But a couple of weeks later, and it's like society's just going to fall back into the same routine. And before you know it, we have another hashtag.
If you could share a key message or key takeaway to people across the world, what would it be?
Love thy neighbor as thyself. Actual, true, meaningful love of looking out for others, being there for the oppressed, being a voice for the voiceless. If we can all just start by extending love to others, then we can do everything else. When we live in an atmosphere of love, we invite peace, we invite justice, we invite fairness, and everything else that's good comes along with that.
I would say that the fight is not over yet. We are going to have to continue fighting, and the road is going to be long and hard. But I promise you that it is going to be worth it, and I do see light at the end of the tunnel. Our voices are being heard. People are joining in, and slowly but surely, we will make a difference.
If you have questions, ask the questions. It's really about the delivery, because you may say something and it will be, delivered in a way where someone will feel offended. Whereas to have a question, to ask someone's experience, to ask how you can help, actually makes a world of difference. And lastly, I just think, we need to keep persevering in the fight and all be united. Because that saying, united we stand, divided we fall.
A lot of us have done many things like signing petitions and sharing links and tweeting and posting stuff on social media. It doesn't stop there. We have to keep doing more. We have to keep looking for more to do, something else to add. The people in power who benefit from the system the way it is, they are counting on your short-termism. They are counting on the fact that, oh, this outrage is just going to be a couple of weeks and then everything just blows over and we're back to normal. Don't stop using your voice. Don't stop using your platform. Don't stop using your privilege. Do not rest until this is a more just society.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much.